155 or 155 or 156. And Julie, can I share my screen?
Sure. Let me give you presentation right. Okay, Jason, you should have presentation rights now.
Okay. So, can you see my screen?
Yes.
So this file is technical report from the open forum. It's 156. So you can see the 7.2 section, the initial provisioning of OU. So, and in this section is described the approach the authenticated on you. So the first one is approach the region only. So is the series number. The second one is the registration ID. So it is must to get you have the to approach to also identify on you can reach the network. So and you can see the diagram, the OAPN on you, the switch number is a switch number and the CID interworking, how to exchange the message between in the phone message and how to recognize the ONU. And but it is some sorry. Hello? You want to talk? Right?
Right.
Okay. So and it is some trick is this if you but this the registration ID is have to install on you and by default. For example, if this on you and it has stored the and the registration number and the registration ID. The first one, the first step, you need to identify the SIS number. If this SIS number is not available, we tend to get the registration ID and to identify what your authentication and behavior, and so this very is some of the different the series number, and I don't know when the other vendor the telco want to use another method to authenticate the ONU. So I think the standard have to use the registration ID and the SIS number. So and you can the series number will not by the only or T, but if you want to register, you want to and not the list on you, and I think you want to own you to use the registration ID, so we need to religion list on you. So you can see the R152 and R153. So the ONU that just support the change ID approach must support a local setting of the change ID. So that means that the ONU needs to support the change ID by locally setting. So that's not as. And the other one is R153, the support the change master and stored in the ONU, and which is stored in the ONU and identity. So in this is the data and the point some approach to approach, and we can follow this approach to implement in the VOLTHA code. And so I can show you another file is technically called 155. Is also point that, and but this session and the point that on CI protocol, the credential status in the QGA APA. So, and before recognize the ONU registration ID, you need to get the ONU registration ID through the ONU protocol. So, and in the list protocol has defined the list credential status. Like this status is defined in the ONUG. So this status point to the status of the application, and it can before you identify and the ONU, you can set that is status. But I cannot. The open forum point to the pending status. So if you before you verify the registration ID, so you need to set up this registration ID verification the status is pending. But as we know the credential status, the value is not pending, so let's need to find out what's going on to set the propose and appropriate the value. So this but another very important issue is And in the VOLTHA code, we need to get the sys number and the license ID. How to install how to store the license ID and sys number to outside system or the heavy store or open floor. So, but we can figure out what's the storing way, how to set this parameter in the VOLTHA code. So, and because we definitely have many on and in the entry network, so we need to find out where we can store in where we can store in somewhere, maybe out of the VOLTHA and preparing the system and to get from the telecom system somewhere. So all the store in the either credit store or the store. As I know, we have the resource manager, so maybe we can use special resource manager to store into the credit store, and if just in case, so we can adjust back which owner and information. And that's all by thinking the implementation of the authentication approach. And the other important sense is open flow. So we can store the license ID, the series number to the open flow. But and as I know that the open flow, we need to implement extension. So this extension is a custom customize the structure, and you can define your parameter into your structure, and but it is some way to look at this implementation. We switch need to compatible your parameter. So this some of the job to find out the implementer extension and to provide the open flow file and make into a library, plug into open flow, and in the specific the version, the open flow version. So there's another way to set the series number and the session ID. So I don't know because this issue is a bit on, is a come from protocol, and I don't much know that I don't know what issue is from the test protocol, how to and change the, some behavior of the all the precipitation behavior. So I just look at and the protocol, the open forum. You can show. I can show this. Another file is the technical report of 247 is only you need to support local setting of SS19. So this the test case is showing the only the ability to set the version ID, and it's a matter to have the support in this case. So this is a procedure. You can see the local management interface at enter the viewer registration ID. So this and the other is a set the registration ID of all new provision in the OSP. So this the test procedure we can follow this procedure to figure out and our implementation and can fit this test case.
Hi Jason, this is Amit from Radisys. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
So just to summarize my understanding, I think we have two questions right now, right? One is should VOLTHA...
Amit,
yeah.
Amit, may I talk? Jason, can you please go on mute in case of Amit is talking, because there's a lot of background noise from your side. It's really hard to understand something. Yeah.
Okay, so you want to go back to the Discourse comment? The G1?
No, Jason, I think he's just asking for you, when you're not speaking, to put your phone on mute, because we have a lot of background noise. And then just take it off mute when you need to speak again. Yeah.
Thanks, Julie.
Okay. So, can you hear me, anybody? Hello?
Yes?
Okay. Okay. So, I just mentioned this while looking the protocol and from the problem forum and the problem forum, the test case, and what is the necessary knowledge and to implement this feature. And
Yeah, hello. Jason, yeah, I wanted to bring up a couple of points. So my understanding, or the summary of my understanding, is that we are faced with two questions or challenges right now. One is whether we need to do the authentication based on the registration ID each time the ranging happens. And what you pointed out in the specifications is that if the serial number is already known to the OLT, which in our case is basically the VOLTHA and ONO systems, then it is not necessary to do the authentication based on the registration ID. That is one. The other is when we do get the registration ID, how do we send it up to ONOS, right? So as per my understanding, these are the two questions that we need an answer for, and how do we, and once we get an answer, how do we get it implemented? So for the first one, so the specification talks about a two-step process where the OLT first gets the serial number and then determines whether it needs the registration ID or not. But if we look at our current implementation of using VOLTHA and ONOS, we don't have a two-step process. It's a single-step process because of the bottom-up discovery, wherein VOLTHA gets the details from the ONU, and as of today, it's only the serial number, and then passes it to ONOS. So for our implementation, I think what we could do is that we get the registration ID every time from the ONU, and that should be that would still be in accordance with the specifications, because the specification does not say that we should not get the registration ID each time. So I think we can solve it that way, but again, it's open for discussion, and people can chime in with their opinions. For the other part, which is once we have got hold of the registration ID at VOLTHA, how do we send it to ONOS? I think that is a bigger question, which I don't have a clear answer for. But as you pointed out, that we would need to change the OpenFlow specification a little bit by introducing some experimental fields. And that is something we need to research on, and maybe work closely with guys from ONF, Shad and Saurabh, to figure out how do we go about doing that. So right now the serial number is being notified to ONOS using the port status message. So we might have to introduce experimental fields in the port status message, wherein along with the serial number we can pass through the registration ID. And another point I would want to bring up here, that along with the registration ID, another important value that would be of significance is the PON port on which the ONU shows up. But that should be trivial to implement once we know how to get the registration ID done, because if we can pass one value, we can pass multiple values. So that is what my understanding is. Anybody else on the call would want to share their opinions?
Thanks, Amit. I fully agree that there's a unsolved question regarding how to transfer the registration ID via OpenFlow. So I think these kind of using experimental fields that you described might be a good solution. I'm afraid I'm not an expert enough to assess on that. The other one is what is the initial idea of the registration ID, and I think Jason pointed out exactly the right documents here, and the right specifications where it is described. And I mean, you are right. There is from a standard, the initial idea is to have a kind of a two-phase authentication. So the first is always the ONU sends the serial number to the OLT, and the OLT determines if that is enough, or he needs another kind of credential. That's the registration ID. And it's also clearly mentioned that if I want to use these processes with a registration ID, I need the ONU, which is able to set these registration ID locally. So I need any kind of a local management or local access to the ONU to set this registration ID locally. And it has to be retained indefinitely. So it will not, or the ONU will not lose these registration ID during reboot or power down. And then, of course, the OLT should request the registration ID somehow from the ONU. So that's in the legacy systems that the approach is also written down in the ITU specification. So after the serial number request, and another request is added for the registration ID. Yeah, if it is not possible to do it in two ways, then we can always do it. We can always do it in one step and ask always for the registration ID. But we should be aware that the process has to work also for ONUs which don't have any registration ID. So if an ONU only has a serial number, then the process has to work as well. Yeah, and then at the end, I suppose Jason had the question how to store or handle the registration ID into VOLTHA, and in that case, I think it's not needed to handle it inside VOLTHA. So I think it's the only need is to retrieve it from the ONU and to pass it to higher layer applications or to pass it north out of ONOS towards some other management systems or whatever which can handle these, which have the valid registrations IDs, compare it and then send down acknowledge or deactivate message. So that's more or less the process in our legacy systems. And yeah, I think that's all what I understood.
I'm thinking that is the ONU implementation with storing the registration ID. So as we knew that is we need to find out is how to implement this implementer extension. So it's regarding to the switch side. So in the controller side, we can implement this some structure into the implementation implementer parameters, but the switch needs to compare and compatible with your controller. So we need to but it's the proprietary concept. Use this registration ID in somewhere open ONOS, and so it's not becoming the beyond the ONOS protocol to define the proprietary parameter, and I don't know what and I don't know what you have the opinion that is the decision proprietary issue for into the switch side.
I'm not sure if I understood it correctly. So. Do you say there's not a standard solution in OpenFlow to cover this, or what is exactly the issue you raised? So the general process.
Because the registration ID has provided the 36 lengths, so it's a I cannot find somewhere in the ONOS parameter can set this value, and I just know is we can use the implementer extension and extension and making those chain library, and if you are some library can generate the open draw file, and into the controller. But the switch side can get your parameter and repeatedly. So I saw this regarding to the proprietary issue between the OLT and between the controller and switch side. So for this so I don't know, in a C-bar, you know that the C-bar is a on-off cluster. So this cluster can talk to the VOLTHA and with a proprietary procedure to get the version ID and the series number. I don't know. So I think can we implement the proprietary approach in the VOLTHA code or not? I don't know. So and another question is this the only way to set the version ID in the ONOS? And can we set another places to set this value to another places? So I don't know what's implementation to this issue to achieve this feature in the field. And the other things and the open OT agent can use the program SDK to get the version ID from ONU, and this I think that's fine. It is supported by the program SDK. So it needs support by the OpenOT agent to use the gRPC and send to the VOLTHA. So that's why I'm thinking. I don't know. Everybody had the same suggestion.
Yeah, Jason, Amit here. So for your question as to if there are other ways of sending across the registration ID to ONOS, I would definitely think that there would be other ways, but I think the idea is to use OpenFlow to convey this message across. As in, that's the architectural choice that is being made, is what my understanding is.
Yeah, also from my understanding, OpenFlow should be the right way to do it. Because that's especially for the provisioning of the ONU. We do the entire process using OpenFlow, so therefore I guess it's the right way to do it. Otherwise, if it is not possible to use OpenFlow, we should be open to think about other options. But to be honest, I don't. I didn't do it in the past.
Okay. Okay, I think this as an option in the owner's side, in owner's stack, but it is something. If you define somewhere, as we know, you cannot define in the action table. You can define. You just store somewhere in owner's. So you need to find somewhere some parameter can store message. You can, but you can't add the parameter in the controller because they affect the switch.
Yes, so Jason, I think we could look into the OpenFlow experimenter message or the vendor extensions message and see if we can use one of those to convey this message.
So you have this but if you yes if you implement the experimenter extension but the others in the controller, so the switch side can support the standard implementer for the provider the parameter. So this is out of the standard for it is it's not our standard. Sorry, it's it is for the proprietary issue. It can implement the standard parameter in the switch. So it's correct.
Yes, that's my understanding. That yes, you're correct. That if we implement vendor message or an experimenter message, it becomes proprietary, but still within the realm of OpenFlow. As in, it still follows OpenFlow protocol, but yes, it is proprietary to the VOLTHA solution.
So okay, so. Okay, so as I know that we have the resource manager, right? So can I use the resource manager to store the registration ID, series number using the resource manager?
Jason, so the resource manager comes into play only after an ONU has been authenticated, right? So you're correct that it could be used in the scenarios where the ONTs are pre-provisioned. But if that is not the case, then it doesn't really work, right? Because we would get the details about ONT only after it is authenticated. So to take the specific case of DT, until unless the ONT gets authenticated, we know nothing about the ONT, what profile it should use, what should be its resource map and things like that. So until unless the authentication happens, for which we need the registration ID, the resource manager does not come into picture in all cases. In certain cases it might work, but not in all cases.
Okay. So in the beginning we set up the pre-provision in the VOLTHA command line. We can set up the authentication method. For example, authentication method, I can use the command to I want to the bring up its own using the series number or the registration ID. So this can choose you can choose which the authentication method you can set up in the command line, right? I
So I'm not sure if I get everything right, but if I understood it correct, you're asking how and where to store the registration ID, and I'm not sure if we really have to store it somewhere in VOLTHA or using Resource Manager for that or something like this. From my perspective, the main or the major important thing, or most important thing, is to pass the registration ID retrieved from the ONU towards a NEM layer application or something like that, and then in these kind of management layer, the authentication will be done, and then authentication successful or not successful message will be sent downwards. So that's how we handle it today. So it's not handled in the OLT itself. The OLT just has to pass these credentials towards in today networks towards an element manager or network management tool, and there's a database which holds all the valid registration IDs per PON port. That was one aspect Amit raised a couple of minutes before, and then based on these information, authentication successful or not successful state is created and pushed down, and then the OLT sends a deactivate message or changes the status to 05. So that's more or less how we handle it today, and I don't see a need to change this. Okay. So what I have in mind is I would like to see how the serial number based authentication is handled today, and then maybe it might make sense to have these registration ID based authentication in a quite similar way. I'm not sure if it is possible, so maybe I have not the deep knowledge of the serial number based process in VOLTHA today. So maybe we can spend a few more words on that process.
Yeah, Björn, I could spend a few minutes on that to the extent that I know. So what happens in case of serial number based authentication is that once the OLT driver gets the serial number of the ONU that is coming in, it creates a logical port, right, and sets the name of the logical port to the serial number of the ONU. Right. So, and this is something that is getting changed, or maybe is already changed, with support for multi-unis. In case of multi-unis, it creates logical port per uni, and the name of the logical port is the serial number underscore or hyphen 1234. And what happens when it creates this logical port is that an OpenFlow message goes to ONOS saying a port added. So the logical port is added, and it gets the name of the logical port is basically what we set in VOLTHA, which is the serial number. So the application, the VOLTHA application running on ONOS, once it gets that, it retrieves the serial number of the ONU from the name of the logical port, and it sends it out as an event on a Kafka bus for external systems to act on it. So in case of SIBA, something which is not bound of ONOS would act on this event from ONOS, saying that, okay, a uniport has been added with this as the serial number. And then it goes ahead and does further processing. If it is allowed, or if the authentication is successful, it instructs ONOS to go ahead and provision the flow rules. If the authentication fails, it just doesn't do anything. So in that case, what happens is that no flow rules are provisioned on the OLT and ONU, so the subscriber or the ONU can't pass any traffic. So that's what is happening with the serial number based authentication. So in summary, it's the name of the logical port which is used to convey this information up to ONOS.
So we can use the same way to store the registration ID and add to the logical port.
That's not possible because the name of the logical port is bound to only 16 bytes. We can't have a name bigger than that, and the registration ID does not fit in that. That is one. The other point is that we need to convey both the serial number and the registration ID to ONOS, right? So we need to send two data and we have only one field. So basically we have two problems. One is the size itself doesn't fit, and we need to send two information out.
So we are faced in the and we need to create some parameter in the ONOS. And for example, we can implement the extension. Just
so as we were talking, I was just looking up the OpenFlow spec, and there seems to be a new message type called experimenter itself. So what I was thinking is that we could introduce this new message and pass all the information that we need, the serial number, the registration ID, and if anything else is needed, inside of this message, right? So whenever we add the logical port, we also send this message out from VOLTHA, and we make the corresponding changes on ONOS side to be able to decode this message and retrieve the information out of this. So that could be one option.
Okay, so Amit, if I understood you right, so you proposed to keep the process of creating logical port based on serial number. You propose to keep it as it is. First.
Yes.
So okay, that makes absolutely sense. So I fully agree on that. And then and after, so that's the first step. If an ONU is connected to the point. So the OLT driver receives the serial number, creates his logical port based on the serial number plus the uni identifier, whatever, and then it gathers all the other information. One of these is of course the registration ID, and using these experimental fields in OpenFlow to send these informations towards the ONOS, and we need some changes in ONOS to handle this information and further and pass it further to some NEM layer applications or whatever is above. And then
I think it's a thing that many tasks in this issue. So maybe I can create another Jira ticket for the sub implementation, like how and to implement the how to get the registration ID from the open OLT driver, and so something like that, or so maybe we can figure out in the Jira ticket to implement.
So Jason, my suggestion would be that before we go ahead and create a Jira, what we could do is write a short write-up on this approach and share it with the wider community, because I'm pretty sure that guys from ONF might have comments on this as to if this is a good way or there exist better ways of doing it. And let's seek their inputs, and then depending on which way it goes, we create the Jiras.
I know that. Okay. Thank you.
So that from my perspective, that makes absolutely sense. So I think in the round we have today, this approach you described, Amit, seems to be the best one we have on the table today. And I fully agree and support the approach to write it down in a few bullet points or how in a reasonable way to avoid any additional efforts or too much efforts, and then share it, especially with the ONF guys, but share it in a larger community to gather some feedback if that might make sense or if there are better approaches. So maybe we three don't see the better approach right now. So and then after the feedback is received, we can judge on further Jira tickets. So from my perspective, that makes sense.
So another question is, if ONU get the registration ID, the ONU need to reboot again, reboot this ONU, and the next for the next stage for authentication. So I want to identify the digital code solution.
Sorry, Jason, I did not get that clearly. Can you repeat that?
So, sorry. So I want to clarify is when the ONU when the ONU get the registration ID and store in the ONU. So my question is in this time the ONU need to reboot for the next rearranging the ONU using the registration ID.
Yeah, Jason. So what we're suggesting is that every time the ONU rearranges, the OLT or VOLTA would ask both the serial number and the registration ID. That's what the proposal is.
So okay, so we need to enable both the factor authentication, the series number, both the series number and the registration ID. We cannot either one to authenticate the ONU.
So the authentication of the ONU lies with systems which are not bound of ONAS. So VOLTA and ONAS basically would just retrieve this data out of the ONU and send it to not bound systems. And what we are proposing is that every time they retrieve both of it, right? Now, if the case is that the ONU does not have a registration ID, so what it would return is some empty string, and that is what VOLTA and ONAS would pass it to not bound systems, and not bound systems can act on it. They would know that okay, so if we take the case of AT&T where they don't work on registration IDs and it's only serial numbers, in that case it would be an empty string that would go in the registration ID field. But anyways, the not bound systems of AT&T would not care.
Okay, so in the problem forum protocol, you can see that this case the ONU need to support the registration ID local setting. So you just mentioned that ONU does not have the registration ID by default. So
Jason, sorry. What I'm trying to say is the problem forum says that the ONU implementation should have support for registration ID from a protocol perspective, but it does not mandate that the end customer or the operator need to set the registration ID. They have a choice of not using it, in which case it would be empty.
Okay. It's empty by default.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that's I think So I can provide us some more information to the VOLTHA community to make a decision how to move forward, and this the implementation, and like owners implemental extension. So, and it looks like the sum of tasks to achieve this goal. Okay, so.
Sorry guys, I have another call coming up in the next 5 minutes. So if we could come to a logical conclusion for today, and if needed, maybe we can set up another call sometime. Or I could drop, you guys can continue.
Yes, okay. Yes, we can talk to on the Gmail or email, something like that. So, thank you guys. And
I think can I explain some just briefly a few words? So I think that there is an approach on the table from Amit, and I think the next step should be to describe it with a few sentences or bullet points and share it in the community. So that is from my perspective the next logical step. So if someone has another view on that, feel free to share. Maybe if we cannot stay longer in the call, we should do it via the email or via the comment of these VOLTHA Jira or however. But from my perspective, that would be the next step.
Okay, sure. So what I would do is I would just jot down a few points on what I was trying to explain as the approach and send it across to the participants of this meeting, and then we could take it forward from there.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and stop the recording then.